Robert Mary is a former editor at the American Conservative. He's also a historian and author of President McKinley, Architect of the American Century. Robert Mary joins us tonight. Mr. Mary, thanks a lot for coming on. So watching the last few days, and one hates to be cynical about the federal government. It's our country, after all. But you couldn't help but feel that what we were watching was a setup designed to get the country into war from the outset. Do you believe that's what we were watching?
Well, I try to be kind of careful about getting into people's minds, but I think that the tape that you showed from Bolton and many, many others indicate that at least John Bolton, and there's evidence looking at it, the same is true of Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, that these gentlemen really do want to get America into a war with Iran. They really do want to change that regime.
So why not be straightforward about it? I mean, it seems to me that it makes the rest of us cynical when we look on and we see people like Bolton, and he's certainly not alone in this, but he's one of the main drivers, pushing the United States to commit additional forces to the region, putting those forces in harm's way, clearly in the hope of spurring some kind of conflict to precipitate a war. Why wouldn't it just be easier for him to say, I think we should overthrow Iran, we're doing it?
Well, Tucker, our history is replete with instances in which presidents and people around the presidents wanted to get us into wars that they couldn't say so because the American people weren't anxious to get into wars. So you can look at what happened with regard to the Mexican War with James Polk, getting us into World War I with Woodrow Wilson, World War II with Franklin Roosevelt, Vietnam, and the Iraq War, all of which had lies, misrepresentations, and maneuverings that were designed to get us into that war without saying so.
So you're suggesting that voters, and since this is a democracy, it matters, voters aren't in favor of wars. But if you read the media accounts, it makes it sound like Americans love war. You're saying they don't.
Well, it depends on the circumstances. Americans didn't want to get into World War II. Franklin Roosevelt did want to get into World War II, so there was a conflict that he had to somehow do something about. And he did everything he could, including actions that I would consider to be unconstitutional, impeachable, to get us into that war. I think that the same thing took place with regard to Iraq. I don't think the American people were as intent on not going into that war, but we ginned up that war by suggesting that there were weapons of mass destruction and collusion between Iraq and the terrorists of 9/11. Untrue in both instances.
Huh. So you're saying that there is a long, almost unbroken history of lying our way into war?
Lying sometimes, not always lying. Sometimes it's manipulations. But yeah, we do have a history of that. America's war-making history indicates that there's been significant instances of that kind of maneuvering, manipulation, and in some instances lying. Vietnam is a great example, to get us into wars that the American people weren't clamoring for.
So you said you don't want to get into anyone's head, and that's an admirable impulse, I would say. But why do you think John Bolton is so fixated on toppling the government of Iran, which doesn't appear to pose any threat to the United States?
Well, I have to tell you, I can't figure it out. I mean, I know John Bolton. I don't know him personally, but I know his work for many, many years, and it's clear that he believes that America, as a unipolar power on the globe at this time, should be bullying other nations and deciding what other regions should be doing with regard to factors that are of interest to America in his mind. And so he wants America to basically determine the regimes all around, and it have to be regimes that he likes and that he thinks America should like. And that's his modus operandi for a very long time, as you pointed out.
Hasn't worked very well. Robert Mary, great to see you tonight. Thank you very much.
Good to see you. Thank you.